Porticus Criminal Justice Challenge has a clear vision to contributing to criminal justice systems in which prison punishment is the last resort and is limited to the loss of freedom, not the loss of dignity, in which there are meaningful conditions for a thriving life after prison release.
Porticus is supporting a sort of centralized organization called FBAC, which is trying to roll out the APAC reform prison model in many parts of Brazil.
Na APAC não há policiais, facções criminosas e nem armas. E todas as chaves das unidades ficam nas mãos dos recuperandos, denominação pela qual os condenados são tratados.
The Changing Trajectories program focuses on rehabilitation and reintegration of formerly incarcerated people. We work with civil society partners to create concrete opportunities for rehabilitation and to work on removing obstacles to social reintegration upon release.
APAC facilities are one example of a model of incarceration that really enables people to have autonomy, to have programming that they're looking for, access to family, access to community-based doctors even. There's just a sense of real growth that's happening inside those facilities in comparison to a mainstream facility.
We are closely accompanied by national donors, members of the federal government, and a growing field of organizations that recognize themselves as part of the criminal justice field in Brazil. The group of partners that we work with include organizations led by people with lived experience that work mostly on advocacy, on research, and direct support. They also work on fostering work opportunities for people who are released.
Desde o dia que eu cheguei na APAC, foi totalmente diferente da recepção que eu tive no sistema comum. Aqui eu tive um crachá de identificação, voltou a minha identidade, que meu pai me deu quando eu nasci, que minha família me deu. A APAC me proporcionou uma bolsa de faculdade.
O trabalho que profissionalismo faz você ser um bom esposo, um bom pai, um bom filho. Eu vejo que o trabalho hoje simboliza também uma parte que você está sendo inserido, está inserido na sociedade, né? O trabalho nos faz mover esperança.
In December 2022, investment committee members and colleagues from the criminal justice team came to Brazil to visit partners from the program Changing Trajectories and learn from the prison reality in the country.
We started first our visit in a mainstream prison where we were met with dozens of heavily armed guys who were the prison staff in flak jackets with helmets, with dogs.
If you enter a prison today, you'll see what we just saw in the December trip. We saw young black men aged 18 to 24 with little to no schooling. So 75% of them have not completed high school.
In contrast, when we went to the APAC prison, which was just up the hill, there are no weapons anywhere. There are no armed guards. The people who are incarcerated are walking around freely, doing their work, going to classes.
The reality check of entering a mainstream prison is always a wake-up call, reminding us of how big of a challenge we have ahead of us, but also how essential and urgent it is to join forces and support the change.
My colleagues and I had the opportunity to talk with someone who is incarcerated at the APAC facility where that person was sleeping in the same room as someone who had harmed their family. And it just goes to show that these APAC facilities foster an environment where people are encouraged to dialogue, to feel in community with one another, to reconcile differences and really address harm and healing.
The preliminary data shows that the recidivism rates for people who go through one of these reform APAC prisons is much lower. We know that it's much cheaper because you're not paying for all those armed guards. It's effective in terms of preventing crime, and that it's effective in helping people return to their communities and lead productive lives.
All countries in the world send people to prison. In different contexts, we see different challenges and outcomes connected to prison. However, we believe that community-based solutions can also be exchanged, and there's a lot to learn from each other. Porticus is supporting the change in different regions and countries by identifying and strengthening models like the APACs in Brazil, Rescale movement in Europe,
and the California model in the US.
And by fostering a cross-learning and demonstrating from a very practical perspective that there are different ways to treat people with dignity and to have prisons that are more community integrated, and that such models and practices are favorable from a rehabilitation perspective and well suited for reintegration purposes. We need to promote the conditions for this kind of work with our neighbors in Latin America and in the Global South especially. We can only wonder the promising results that this shift of paradigm can bring.